story.
Okay. Welcome back. You're watching Inside Politics. Thank you for staying with us. We continue with our deliberations right here in studio. I'm joined virtually by Joshua Kipto. He's a former Nandi speaker and an advocate of the High Court. In studio, I'm joined by Ambassador Dr. Koki Muli, who's a governance and elections expert, and equally joined by Dr. Duncan Ojuan, an international law expert. Just before the break, we're talking about the dialogue call by the president and Azimio leader Raila Odinga, who are in unison in terms of Kenya needs to address the national issues that are pressing currently at the moment. Well, my panelists seem to differ slightly on the call for dialogue. One panelist says it needs to be genuine, that we shouldn't be managed or it shouldn't be sidetracked, at least in terms of the agenda of the Gen Z. But equally, we have some who are pushing for dialogue as the way forward. Dr. Ojuang, you seem to be one of those who are pushing for dialogue as the way forward. After what Dr. Ari has said, what's your chance of rebuttal?
I think she's right.
Yes.
But let us not straitjacket and react to the vocabulary of dialogue. Because I also concede that there should not be one size fits all. Youths are engaged better in the spaces they naturally occupy. For example, for me, I don't see why university leaders and institutions of higher learning have a lot of youths. The part of the dialogue should be even in the university, or the spaces or whatever. So it's not about form. But I wanted to give 3 reasons why it's important to dialogue. One, she was part of Constituent Assembly that brought our constitution. These people came from Bomas, from all corners, and spoke about very difficult issues. Number 2, even if it is to go to the dialogue and say we don't want dialogue, we want to come out with a framework of how to implement TGRC, with how to implement the Ndungu Land Report, with how to implement. That is already a dialogue about how to move forward. So let us not preempt, because, and I've seen it, myself and Kipto are involved in a process about South Sudan mediation, where the dialogue is about, we have all these nice reports. How do we move forward? And the discussion is narrowed with much clarity on not writing another report, but how do we move forward? This is why dialogue is very important. Number 1, it promotes debate and discussion. It promotes equality of public actors. Because those people who naturally could not get to that space, in that space and speak their mind. So it promotes equality of citizenship. It promotes universalism, because now you are bringing all form of people, and so everyone can access power and talk about their country. It is about equality of citizenship. And number 4, our constitution is about participatory democracy. And that is at the heart. Whether it is going there and giving a middle finger, that is already dialogue. Whether it's going there with the tape on your mouth and saying, I don't want to say any further, I want you to go implement 1, 2, and 3. But let people do it in the space that they are comfortable with. If it is in the X space, if it is in Facebook, if it is wherever, but let us not fear to talk as a country. Thank you.
Interesting. And since you both have institutional memory, I just want to play a bye by former president, the late Mwai Kibaki, in terms of what went down in 2005 as he was breaking down his cabinet after the draft constitution was overwhelmingly voted against. Let's listen in briefly.
Accordingly, in accordance with the powers conferred upon me under the Constitution of Kenya, I have directed that the offices of all ministers and all assistant ministers become vacant. Consequently, the occupants of the said offices cease to hold their respective offices with the immediate effect. A reconstituted government will be in place within 2 weeks.
So that was late former President Mwai Kibaki. Dr. Koki, are there any parallels we can draw from 2005 and what we saw just last week as President William Ruto was dissolving the cabinet in terms of the steps forward? Because Mwai Kibaki said in the next 2 weeks, President Ruto has hinted in the next 2 weeks we might have a new cabinet. In terms of the formation of this cabinet, are there parallels we can draw from back then as compared to now? Briefly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say that very few, very few, because the people who the late Mwai Kibaki disbanded were the people who led the opposition, the orange side of the yes, those who were against the draft constitution. And there were justifications for that. I mean, the merits and demerits we will not discuss.
Okay.
But the parallels are that Mwai Kibaki then disbanded the cabinet for two reasons. One, of course, political survival. Two, to rid himself of elements who are actually, you say, fighting from inside and not fighting from outside. And to give himself an opportunity to reconstitute a government that can actually help him deliver on his agenda. The second thing was, at the time of the rejection of the draft constitution in 2005, there was a lot of animosity and alignment on ethnic blocks. Okay. And there was a lot of push and pull, and people saying they are here with this one or they are there. In fact, as you recall, a lot of people didn't sufficiently read the content of the constitution then. Some said Baba akisoma tumesoma, wengine wakasema Koki akisoma tumesoma, and so on. I was involved in civic education at the time, and the focus was not necessarily there. So President Kibaki's aim was to address those issues. The purge by President Ruto is essentially triggered. I say triggered because there are many reasons why it's happening, but it was triggered by the demands from our transformers, our change, our changers, the people who have changed our political landscape, and it will never be the same. Okay. Because where we are is not where we were a few weeks ago before they started this. And that's why I am confident and hopeful that we're actually going to a better political landscape than before. Okay. So for him is trying first to appease the Gen Z's demands. Secondly, we are all going through a very traumatic experience with all the sacrifices, the killings, the disappearance, the forced disappearances. And there are a lot of Kenyans who have lost loved ones, who have been affected by the use of force by our security personnel. And those people are not with us in terms of speaking about dialogue. There are people who are saying, my son is still missing. And you are here talking about forming a government of national unity. There are those issues. The Gen Zs are saying, we have spoken enough. Can we? So the parallels are completely different, other than the fact that they disbanded and they are talking about 2 weeks period.
Yes.
For me, moving forward, I would say one thing. As a president, please listen. Listen to what Kenyans are saying, led by our Gen Zs. Listen to that. Don't patronize or gaslight them. They know what they are talking about, and we agree with what they are proposing. It's just a methodology that you need to follow. Okay. You can have anybody, even you can be the Minister of Information, but let's do it properly and within the Constitution. It's not what you do, and it's not who sits in your cabinet that matters, and that's what Gen Zs are saying. It is, one, how they get there, it's your business, but give us competent people based on merit, who know what they are doing and who will respect the rule of law, who will respect human rights, and who will not forget what has brought us here. The people who are in the morgue, the people who have disappeared, the abductees, the families, all those people who are maimed, they should all be treated and taken care of at the national expense. The burials, the funerals should be done at the national expense. The families of those people, we need to do something about that so that it's genuine, that we are actually interested in transforming Kenya. But having, men, and I take great exception to the photograph in front of KICC, of all men. Of all men, there was not a single woman there. And that is the face of Kenya. What are we saying? They are all old men. In fact, there are no Gen Zs there. And so when you talk about dialogue, let's really, really be genuine with ourselves. And let's focus on what can heal this country, not what will immediately... If we give all these men, all those men who are there, we put all of them in cabinet, is that going to solve our problem? That's why it is important. And we cannot have dialogue about dialogues. We have these reports. Let's implement them. Let's not talk about how to implement them. Each report, and I've read the entire NADCO report because I'm an interested party, it is clear on the implementation framework. There is nothing that is not clear. We have 9 bills that are saying this is the way we are going to address the things that are not right in the Constitution. We will amend here, we will amend there, and this is going to get us there. So we are already ready. Let's do some action.
Interesting. And speaking of action and the rule of law, Wakili Kipto, I just want to engage you briefly because it seems that in most and not all instances that when the government makes a move, it is contested in the court of law. Case in point, the Debt Audit Task Force. What exactly are we looking at? Is it a problem of lack of accurate legal advice? Or do you side with one of the reports that was put in the dailies that perhaps the Attorney General is not listened to, the former Attorney General for that matter? What's your take on the issue about the cases that pop up time and time again? Some argue that it might be judicial activism. How do you look at it, Wakili?
Thank you very much. I just wanted first to comment just one thing that Dr. Koki has mentioned. When you ask the comparison between the Kibaki dismissal of the cabinet after the 205 referendum, I just want to draw 2 parallels. Every government has its moment of crisis. More or less, I call it a moment of awakening. And every regime always has that moment. Every government, Moi 82, and then 91 again, you have Kibaki 205, then 207. For Uhuru, maybe small, not too much, but I think 2014, with the spate of violence from terrorist-related activities, and then subsequently 2017, when his election was nullified for them to go for another election. Now for William Ruto, this is the main asking. One parallel for the Kibaki, and that is a lesson I would want the president to be able to take. Kibaki squandered 2 major opportunities. In 2003, when he was elected on the back of 67% of the country, the message at that time was renewal of the country beyond tribe, beyond ethnicity. Ethnicity was a dragon that needed to be slain, and he lost that opportunity. And that is why immediately Kibaki got into government in 2003, the biggest undoing of his regime, it was seen to be run by ethnic chauvinists. And 2005 was a second chance to be able to reboot. And in him sacking the cabinet saying he would wish to consider government of national unity, they still consider the patronage-based system. And the results were there to see. 2007 did not happen in a vacuum. It was, and that's why you remember the coinage of 42 against 1. It was the toxicity of ethnic politics that the Kibaki regime in 2 occasions failed to take advantage of the crisis. So if I'm to draw parallel, it is now the turn of our current president, the 5th president, to also consider that this crisis offers opportunity, whereby it's not business as usual. Number 2, this is a cry for governance reboot. And that is why I say for him, it offers the... Now, coming to your question, which of the president, you have a case for losses in court. Why do we have losses in court? One, I cannot speak as to who says the truth, whether it is true the AG has not been listened to or not, because the same AG came back with a rejoinder. He even gave out a statement that was issued to the to the media and to the general public, but that may not be true. The inner workings of government can best be known by the people at the cabinet level, so I would not speak much of that. However, my observation is simple. That is one observation I made as this government came to power in 2022. Activism has changed. Accountability as a tool has changed. The mode of seeking accountability has significantly changed, because previously the best way of people seeking accountability was through protests, through petitions, and what have you. But there's a new arm of seeking accountability through the judicial process. Since the establishment of the Constitutional Court, and if you can see the trajectory since 2010 with the Constitution, the current Constitution, and with more judges and the clear divisions in High Court, specifically the Constitutional Division, what has happened is that you have citizens, you have active members of society increasingly emboldened to go to court to seek interpretation and to be able to remedy whatever they feel that has not been done according to the law, according to the Constitution. And that is one thing we need to appreciate. So what then that means, and the first government to experience that in a brutal way was the Uhuru government, whereby it was not, and it is no longer business as usual. When there is a problem, anything legal, remember that will be challenged in court. And you have groups like organization I belong to in form of LSK. That is their forte. That is their domain. You've had a rise of cases of popular public petitions done by citizens. Remember, Okia Omtata made his name not because he's a lawyer, but because of his ability to prosecute and raise issues in court that challenges every administrative action of government. So that's a new norm. What then that does mean? The government then needs to move with speed. The government has a competent Attorney General's office. It's a big behemoth. Actually, if you've worked with government, you'll appreciate the amount of talent that is within Attorney General's office. Number two, Attorney General's office services all the other ministries. You have state councils spread across the different departments and ministries. It's a wake-up call. Maybe most of the time, the line departments, and I really empathize with the president, because that tells you it's a failure below the presidency in form of the state departments and the ministries taking seriously the legal implications of whatever action or administrative move they seek to make. For a long time, there's always been assumption that government can get away with whatever they wish to do, whether it's a new program, whether it's a new policy. I feel that the state departments and the ministries, as same as with agencies, have not for a long time taken seriously the fact that nowadays every single move our government agency does is under scrutiny, and any legal implication is brought before the judiciary to appreciate. So my proposition would be, government should wake up and appreciate that, one, they have lost too many in courts. And it is always procedural issues. It's nothing substantive. It is mostly procedural issues. It is about compliance. So the question would be, do we have agencies, departments, and ministries taking into account opinions, legal opinions provided by the respective state councils or legal departments within themselves? Or do they just ignore and choose to act, forgetting that the same decision or program will be challenged in court? How comes we've been losing 75 to 80% of government programs and initiatives have always fallen under the hammer once it goes to the court? The same even applies to parliament, not just the executive. So it's a wake-up call. My proposition would be, with the new wave for demand for accountability driven by an active citizen and population, it means then the government has to redouble its effort. I think State House must now put its foot down to all the agencies, all the departments, and tell them the president is not going to sanction any single program or project unless and when the legal implication has been fully considered and all legal compliance needs have been met, and its compliance and fidelity to the law and the Constitution has been met. That must be the holy grail. There's no two way about it. So that by the time the president goes out to roll out a program, it should not be a case whereby the president today launches something with pomp and glamour and tomorrow it is nullified in court. Actually, if you remember, during the second term of Uhuru, ultimately, it became known that whatever the president says is declared null and void in court, until it was almost a joke that the government, the second term of Uhuru government was said to be null and void because every single thing they tried to do, including BBI, fell under the helm of the judicial courts. So the William Ruto regime should not fall under the same. My proposition is simple. Every single program, however small, however big, has to go through careful scrutiny of the legal counsel as well as the Attorney General, so that by the time the President rolls it, chief should never have been a problem by now. Parliament should equally play its role.
Okay,
and that's why I want to agree with Dr. Kokimbul.
Yes.
We are done with that idea of just sycophanting and following what the government of the day wants. Parliament now must step up. Parliament has a competent legal office. Actually, there are so many legislatures that are lawyers. They should understand this better. Whatever legislation comes in, and the majority leader, majority whip should not just be concerned having a legislation passed, but should also be concerned as to its compliance and its legal viability, so that they don't embarrass the president. How would you feel, for example, Chief is a major presidential legacy project? Remember when they were prosecuting the affordable housing, all those programs ended up being nullified in court, where Parliament has been sent back. This is the second or the third time Parliament is being told, redo and ensure compliance to the Constitution. That should not happen.
Okay, Kipto, definitely well illustrated points right there in terms of Parliament not being a rubber stamp of the executive, and equally more caution in terms of passing new laws, policies, as well as we should definitely take a look at the legal repercussions thereafter. Allow us to take a short break. As we come back, we fully focus on IEBC matters right now, because just this week we saw President William Ruto assent to the to the IEBC amendment bill into law. It hasn't been gazetted yet, but that kickstarts a very rigorous process of the IEBC commissioners being appointed. There are a couple of changes in that new law. Case in point, the vice chair of the IEBC cannot assume the position of the IEBC chair once there is a vacancy. We'll definitely break down some of the nitty-gritty details you need to know about that particular law, even as we stare at the delimitation of boundaries, which should have concluded by March 2024. So let's take that break.